Good morning, one and all. We are doing Azadi, a novel by Chaman Nahal, and this video is in continuation to our previous video where we looked at Lala Kasiram, how Lala Kasiram pleases the British officials. The superintendent knew the Punjabi terminology and did not show alarm at the fatherhood attributed to him. He only smiled benignly and somewhat confusedly at the little child. Sir, he is quite good in his studies. So I told you that Lala Kasiram used to take with him Arun, his son, and he is familiar to the superintendent, and when he is accompanying to his child, the superintendent also asks about the child. Now is he really? Yes sir, very good. He knows all the causes why Henry VIII broke up with the Pope, addressing Arun. Come on Arun, tell the Sahib what you know about reformation in England. Begin by numbers. So Lala Kasiram shows that I have taught everything to my child, and he knows everything about English uh, periods in literature, and the kings who ruled in England, and the Renaissance and the Restoration, everything. In a whisper, now wake up, you. I will skin you alive if you cannot mention the causes. The superintendent passed on, but Lala Kasiram had his day. If he was disappointed in Arun, he recovered his composure after he had boxed his ears and the child had started crying. But we know that Arun is a child, he don't know anything. How can he answer? So Lala Kasiram becomes disappointed and he recovers his composure after weeping, and the child also weeps. After having marched around and displayed their regimental flags and scarlet uniforms, the Tommies gathered near a Union Jack in the center and hollered three times, hip hip hurrah, hip hip hurrah, hip hip hurrah. The natives did not know a thing about what was happening, but they joined their masters in shouting out aloud, some saying hup hup and some hurrah hurrah in place of the right words. Another year had been formally assured in for a people whose new year really began in April on the Baisakhi day, and the entire parade marched back to barracks and the crowd broke up. So this happened on the New Year rally. The seasoned spectator did not leave the parade ground, for now was the time when the stray dogs were shot by the Gora Sahibs. The Sahibs were cut to the quick to see these saggy creatures with uncreated skin and flies buzzing in their ears roaming around the place. So, this is about the brutality of the British officers. They used to kill the stray dogs, while the soldiers were smartly presenting arms and standing to attention to the tune of God Save the King. This was their national song. They took all human precautions to exclude these sickly brutes in advance from the parade ground. But what was an Indian dog if it could not be sneak past any barrier? And you can say that his it's the it's dog's death which is calling to him to pass the barrier, and to interfere or to enter in the restricted area. And while the RSM was shouting attention, several of these lowly creatures would be running at top speed from one end to the cleanly swept parade ground to another. A few older lions ran after the dogs to shoo them away, but the dogs, though wobbly on their thin legs, were too fast for them. And then the crowd drove them back into the center of the ground the moment they reached the periphery. The soldiers on parade were certainly fun for the ground, but the dogs were a greater fun, and they drove them back with stones. So it was an very amazing scene used to take place at the time, and like people are showing the dogs because English parade show will take place there. How dogs can enter in that clean space, doubling up with laughter and cheers. Soon the order lines would be running in the other direction until they caught up until they caught up with the dogs and cornered them and took them out. But do you think they had finished with them? No, sir. They did not know what creatures they had taken on. For surely, as the adjutant rode past on his white horse, his sword held upright in front of him, the brass of his uniform and the steel of his sword dazzling in the early morning sun. So the narrator here describing the magnificence and the splendidness of the soldiers who used to carry on swords and guns, and there would be a small stray dog only a few steps away from the horse, marching almost in step with the horse, its skinny tail wagging, its saggy, lean mouth turned towards the ferocious looking man on the horse, just unable to contain its curiosity about what the horse and the man were doing there. So, dog is ignorant about the condition, what is happening. He is curious, but it annoyed the officers and it called their death. It must be stressed that not once did any of these Indian dogs break the decorum of, and like this, these Indian dogs broke the decorum of the parade, and this was unbearable for the British, and they used to kill the dogs. There is no record that any of them defiled the ground with its faces, a remarkable display of fortitude, considering this precisely was the hour when they usually emptied what the humans call their bowels, nor that any of them ever used a motionless soldier as a prop for lifting its leg and emptying its bladder. If the itch on the saggy skin became too much, the dog momentarily stopped and with one nimble foot gave a vigorous scratching to a part of its belly. But it did this in absolute taste, quickly and smartly, and in another moment it was back again in step with the adjutant on his charger. As soon as the parade was over, 3 or 4 sergeants came back on bicycles with guns in their hands. No one had dared flout the authority of the King Emperor for the last several centuries. The geography books and the used wall maps in schoolrooms proclaimed in bold letters the sun never set on the British Empire, but during the parade it did briefly set here because of the sacrilege committed by these filthy beasts of a filthy race. Left to themselves, the sergeants would have made men pay for that crime, as they did as recently in 1919 when they shot hundreds of them out of hand with machine guns and Jallianwala Bagh. So the writer is describing historical events also, like in Jallianwala Bagh, which took place in 1919. The British army shot lot of Indian people who were gathered there, but times had changed for that kind of revenge, so now they only went after the dogs because time had changed. So many movements took place, and now British government is under the pressure of giving freedom to India. So now it seems that they are losing their anger on dogs. The sergeants held the cycles with one hand, leaving the other free to carry the gun. They appeared to be cool, they even whistled an old British tone, but the crowd knew the storm brewing inside their minds, and obligingly they made room for them, gathering themselves into several small circles. This was quite an effort for these people to adjust themselves so abruptly to another type of formation. The Indian mind, immersed as it is most of the time in such lofty subjects as the Brahmin and the Atman, and the ultimate end of man, is not a very fast moving mind. It takes care of earthly, worldly things rather slowly, but knowing the agony of their foreign masters, these men, with the proverbial generosity of the soul, each Indian pauses for the entire created universe, willingly obliged. It was not for nothing their history spoke of their ancestors feeding snakes with milk or carrying food for tigers into their dens. So Indians used to be very brave, but Where is the bravery now? Why they are uh, become helpless in front of these British officials. All created matter was one, man and beast and bird, and the flowers and the trees to boot. And these Angrez were another aspect of the same Brahmin who constituted total reality. So these Angrez are having the capacity to rule over these people by making them fool. Today they govern the Indians, tomorrow maybe the Indians would rule over them. It can happen, who can say? At the moment they needed their help, their hurrah parade had been ruined by these nasty dogs, which no one owned and which were a nuisance to the entire community. They must help them to corner these scavengers and destroy them. The crowd had not only split up into several small arenas, but in each arena they had concerned one dog for the ultimate arrival of the Sahibs. Thanks for watching. We will be